So welcome everyone to the Innovative Cities Lecture here at the School of Architecture and Urban Planning at UW-Milwaukee. I'd like to start with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge in Milwaukee that we are on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homeland along the southwest shores of Michigamme, North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Connec+ing rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. We always encourage everyone to click on the map and see who are the native elements and people that were in your community that you live in today, whether it's here in Wisconsin or somewhere across the country. So welcome everyone, we're really excited. We have a great group today. Just a reminder of our upcoming events. We have our annual Cause-Your Lecture on April 20th. That's here in person at the School of Architecture and Urban Planning. And that'll be at 4 p.m. right down in the common space. We're really excited to have Bill Quackenbush join us from the Ho-Chunk Nation. He's going to provide their perspectives of their principles that they apply to both development and preservation. I know a lot of people think of the native tribal work as casinos, but they do a lot of preservation as well as development for housing for their tribal members. And then we'll have a lot of discussion on how that relates to everyday practitioners here in Wisconsin. And then our final Innovative Cities Lecture will be on May 2nd, and we'll be focused on water and environmental justice. So we're excited to have you joining us today. We have a great panel that's going to talk about downtown Milwaukee. They're in the midst of their downtown plan update, focusing on connecting people and places. And we have Tanya from the City of Milwaukee and Long Range Planning. She's with the Department of City Development, as well as Beth and Matt from the Milwaukee Downtown Bid 21. As you have questions or thoughts, please type them in the chat. We are going to hold all questions until they are finished, and we should have about 10 minutes or so before we conclude at 1 o'clock. So welcome. I'll pass it to Tanya.
Thanks so much, Carolyn, and good afternoon, everyone. Almost said morning, but we're here midday in the sun now. So just wanted to kick things off. It's great to be here with so many fellow planners and community practitioners. And before we dive in, I just really want to thank my colleagues from Bid 21, Milwaukee Downtown, Beth and Matt and others on their team, because without all of their tremendous support and collaboration, this plan would not be where it is today. And I think that that is just a huge takeaway for me in regards to comprehensive planning and just how important those on the ground partners are, because even, during planning, as collaborative as we are, it truly takes a team, and we just wouldn't be here with this plan that I have a feeling might be an excellent one, all thanks to them. So again, I'm Tanya Fonesca. I'm the long range planning manager for the city. Our team manages the city's comprehensive plan, which covers all 96 square miles. I don't recall the exact number, but we probably have over 30 plans that we utilize to plan for the city. And we have the city divided into 14 specific area plan areas. Downtown is one of those 14. And as you see here on this slide, because it's a plan, we do need to have boundaries drawn on paper so we can make sure every inch of the city is planned for. We're taking this with a bit of grain of salt because, of course, there are statutory needs for this, but also we know that downtown is a state of mind. And if we all took a piece of paper and drew a map of downtown, it would be completely different. And that's okay. And so although we are kind of planning within these specific boundaries, one key component of this was to really strongly consider those connections to the surrounding neighborhoods in Lake Michigan. And thus, we branded this planning process as Connec+ing MKE for those physical connections, but also kind of our own personal connections to the city that we live in. So here's our project timeline. We kicked this off in fall of 2021, and it was still, that era of the pandemic where everything was virtual. So our first public meeting and all of the engagement took place in that way, but we're kind of now in the second phase or fourth phase of the project now, where we're doing things fully in person as we wrap things up. And I'm sure many of you have even participated in prior public meetings. Our next one, our final one, will be May 11th. And then we are preparing for the adoption process later this summer. In terms of our process, I think another thing that is so helpful for comprehensive planning is having that technical support when you need it, right? And many communities across the state and nation hire consultants to help with their comprehensive planning. We certainly did that as well for some really strategic specific things. So one, we had an equity and engagement consultant, and that particular individual, Janine Edwards of P3 Development, helped us form a downtown plan community council. And this is a pilot for us as we're exploring our equity work at the city. We worked with Janine to identify 18 local residents. I believe technically it's 17, but regardless, local residents from surrounding neighborhoods and downtown to really focus on equity in our downtown planning process and our recommendations. And so Janine, our consultant, has really been helpful as well throughout the process to keep us on point in that regard. We also hired an urban design consultant, which is TKWA, a local architecture firm, who helped us with those renderings to help us really clearly communicate the vision of what we're striving for in downtown. So you'll get to see a lot of their imagery today. So just a big shout out to all of them, including our community council members. Again, in terms of our engagement, we will have had 4 public meetings as well as the 2 final public hearings as part of our adoption process. We've also done a lot of communication throughout the process. If any of you are familiar with our kind of clunky e-notify system, you know that, but also the bid has a really streamlined communication system that we were able to utilize. The city also has a brand new virtual engagement platform at engagemke.com. And that was really instrumental for us because we started during the pandemic. But it's also a tool and a platform for engagement that's here to stay. And so we're really excited to revolutionize our planning processes, including this, because now folks can participate and engage and comment and learn more about our plans anytime, even from their phone when they're walking around downtown. So we're really excited about that. And because of that, we've had unprecedented feedback, which is really exciting. It was a little overwhelming at first, but it's a really good situation to be in, obviously. We have participation from every single zip code in the city, which we had to be intentional about, and I think was really important in terms of specific engagement in the community, particularly engagement in areas of the city where we weren't getting engagement from as we were tracking zip codes, but also neighborhoods that are nearby downtown and have historically been underrepresented in planning processes. And we wanted to make sure that wouldn't be the case. And again, over 3,000 comments and counting, and that's not including the ones in public meetings on sticky notes. We're still doing that too. And it's been really instrumental to the process. In terms of public comment themes, we've heard it all, but there are some really strong themes. One is that streets and public spaces in our downtown really need to evolve. We as a community really want to see more. We need more. We need safer spaces, but we also need more vibrant spaces. Sustainability and resilience obviously came up. Housing and neighborhoods came up in terms of needing more density, needing more affordability, more housing types, more business types, and more diverse business types. And of course, continuing to really embrace our, diverse community here and making sure that everyone has a place in our downtown and feels safe and welcome and can come here anytime. So all of this feedback that we got got funneled into these categories, which is really, these 8 goals, and our entire plan framework is kind of structured around these 8 goals. So each of these goals has become a chapter with its own life of recommendations and policies and strategies and projects. So based on these 8 goals, we have 40 recommendations and then I'm not sure how many policies and actions and projects, but a lot of lists, lots of things to do. But beyond that, I also just wanted to call attention to some of our priority targets that I think are really driving the plan. And one is that our current downtown population is 17,000 residents, and we want to more than double it by 2040. That means we need about 15,000 more housing units in our downtown, and we want at least 20% of them to be affordable to Milwaukeeans. We also want to grow downtown jobs to 100,000 from 60,000 by 2040. So we want downtown to grow a lot, is the essence of it. And all of our engagement really pointed at the real need for that. We want vibrancy, and in order to do that, we need to grow and be more dense. Something that we do in Milwaukee, and I think is really common in comprehensive planning across the state, is to identify priority projects, or catalytic as we call them, projects that are really going to change and be instrumental to set the tone for the next decade and beyond. And so we've identified 7 so far. And of course, if we're missing anything, you've got to tell us. We're definitely looking for that feedback. But to start with, we've identified Water Street as a catalytic project, and kind of in a couple different ways. One, as a key entertainment district in our downtown. There is a lot of entertainment happening on it already, but there's also a lot of key development sites along it that are just ripe for more density and vibrancy. But also we are looking at it in terms of major transformation and how the street works. And I know that an existing condition diagram or photo is not included here, but just know it's 4 lanes for vehicular traffic. And what the vision is for this street is to completely redesign it. This is a major priority corridor for our transit system. It also, being an entertainment district, interestingly, has some of the most narrow sidewalks in our downtown. And given that this is such a priority north-south artery through our downtown and our city, we want to see that transformed. And so what you're seeing here are, these bus lanes and wider sidewalks, and space for people, and seeing that move further south through downtown and eventually into the 3rd ward is the big vision. This here, you're seeing City Hall Square too today. Again, you're not seeing existing conditions, but that little square plaza area in front of City Hall is quite small. And so the vision is to really combine that with the enlarged sidewalk and Market Street, actually redevelop the very building that I am sitting in right now, and bringing it closer to that plaza area so that we have more vibrancy there as well. And that this space is truly a space for people to reflect, gather, and protest. We've also identified the existing Marcus Performing Center parking garage as a key site. This is on Water. And currently it is a single-use parking structure. It's at the end of its life. And, we hope to see this be redeveloped. There is a rendering for the vision of this. It's just not ready for public consumption yet. So definitely stay tuned. I think we're going to blow your socks off. It's really exciting. And this will be going out to RFP later this month, request for proposals for development on this site. So this is some really exciting, I think, early implementation. Of course, 794 and the Clybourne Avenue corridor are elevated as catalytic projects. I think I saw 1,000 friends here. Their Rethink 794 campaign is very timely, of course, as we're doing the downtown planning process. And Wisconsin Department of Transportation is also currently doing a study on the future of this lake interchange. So certainly the vision is for this to change dramatically, and there's a lot of work underway to determine how and what that will mean. And I believe WisDOT will be having public meetings about that starting this spring or summer. So stay tuned there as well. This is really exciting. We obviously have a history of, taking down some of these human-made barriers, and this is certainly the next one that is being discussed for a very good reason. The streetcar, the hop, as great as it is today now, we want to see it extended, not only in downtown, but beyond. You know, the city historically had a really elaborate streetcar system, and we need to keep building it back. So what we're showing here and talking about is continuing that loop. Part of it is under construction today towards the lakefront, but very importantly, also, we want to extend it up to Bronzeville and Walker's Point and just keep going. You know, transit expansion and enhancement is absolutely critical for the future of our city. We also have identified 6th Street and the complete street as a catalytic project for a few reasons. Again, it's a major north-south corridor. It's also incredibly unsafe, like Water Street. Both of them, you know, are on the high injury network, and that brings a lot of challenges. And certainly with a lot of unfolding transformation along the 6th Street corridor, from the new public museum to the eventual changes at Hillside, MacArthur Square, of course, Deer District, MATC. We really want to see this space be safer for all users, including pedestrians. And here is, you know, a vision for MacArthur Square, not only for that public space that is certainly deserving to be transformed and be utilized and accessed more easily, but also kind of breaking the space down to reconnect to the grid of the city a little bit more. So here you're actually seeing a new street in place of 2 kind of, I guess we'll say, blank canvases for future development. One is the existing public museum site, which we are showing as a redevelopment site, and are really excited about that opportunity, as well as the current state office building, which could be, you know, adaptively reused as it is perhaps, or potentially a redevelopment site as well. And this, you know, could be housing, it could be office, it could be a lot of different things. And finally, before I pass things off to Matt, this one is a little unique in that it's not a specific project in the traditional sense, but that we are kind of talking a little bit more about how we manage our public space in downtown. And therefore, we're elevating the public space management organization for the downtown parks and gathering spaces, because there are a lot of partners doing this today, friends groups, also the business improvement district that's here today. And although these are predominantly county managed and owned parks, in order to really transform them, those public-private partnerships and those friends groups are absolutely critical. And so what is clear to us is, based on all of the community feedback, of which, although we love our parks, we're an ambitious community and we want to see more. We want to see them transform significantly so that they can be utilized even more than they are today. We need to build capacity and, you know, more financial sustainability for the future of that, especially when we're thinking about equity and the way, you know, and the ability for the county to be able to manage all of these park spaces. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Matt.
All right, thanks, Tanya, and hi, everybody. I'm really glad to be here today. I'll just dive right in to keep the discussion going. Along with the goal statements and the catalytic projects that Tanya just highlighted, we've also developed what we're calling some big ideas to help guide the public and private investment moving forward to advance the plan's recommendations for the future of downtown. So another way that we've sort of organized a lot of the plan content. Over the course of the next couple of slides, I will go over some of these big ideas throughout the presentation, but to name a few, and you'll see some of these repeating themes and some of the repeating projects throughout the plan. But we're talking about that we must keep growing downtown's both daytime and nighttime population. We must design streets that support all different types of users. We must invest in our parks and gathering spaces. We've seen just a huge amount of the public input that has came through the process, really talking about our streets and our park spaces. We also need to expand and enhance our public transportation options for all users. And we must also work to connect and reconnect our downtown with surrounding areas. Tanya, if you are able to advance the next slide. Thank you very much. First, the first big idea is jumping in and really improving streets to support all users. As I mentioned, just an unprecedented focus of our comments throughout the public process have been about our public realm. A connected downtown that's welcoming and accessible to all users by foot, transit, bicycle, and prioritizes the experience of individuals who are walking, biking, using transit is extremely important. So as a part of a main theme that you'll see coming out of the plan recommendations is really to accommodate all these different types of users, creating an enhanced transit experience on Wisconsin Avenue, Water Street, and 6th Street. Building a bike network, a protected bike network that better connects the greater downtown area with recommendations on Kilbourne, 6th Street, Van Buren, and as well as connected to the Beer Line Trail, Oak Leaf Trail, and Hake Aaron trails throughout. On the next couple of slides, we just have a few examples of a couple of those particular recommendations. First, I know Tanya talked a lot about Water Street, but it has been really a focal point throughout our public input period. And again, it's one of the big ideas about the vision to reduce the number of motor vehicle lanes, as you see. Consider curb extensions, enhancing the streetscape, transit lanes, wider sidewalks to support the entertainment district, as well as make the streets safer in general for pedestrians. Really what you're seeing here, and then ultimately through the enhanced public realm and investments, we're hoping to encourage additional development on underutilized surface parking lots that are also in this area. Skipping over into the Westtown neighborhood, if we look at a complete street recommendation treatment for Kilbourne, transforming the public realm to better connect with the new investments that are ongoing over at the Wisconsin Center District, the expansion there. New investments at the Journal Sentinel site. You may have just seen that there's a new hotel coming along the Kilbourne Avenue corridor in this location, as well as unlocking the development potential on some underutilized surface parking lots that are in this area as well, all connecting better to Pure Marquette Park and through better connections by narrowing the intersection, protecting bike lanes, and enhanced green infrastructure. Another big idea focuses around expanding and enhancing transit, creating robust transit options that include streetcar extensions, as Tanya had mentioned, the expansion and support of bus rapid transit, which in the downtown planning area, we're going to see the testing of the bus rapid transit system starting in just the next few months here. Enhancing just that general transit experience and also recommendations around the expansion of intercity rail between Milwaukee and neighbor cities. Ultimately, a connected downtown provides connecting downtown to the neighborhoods through enhanced transit certainly is a recommendation that will help really live out the theme of connecting MKE, so connecting downtown through these physical transportation improvements. Another big idea, which Tanya focused on a bit as well, is reconnecting places that are created by that have been divided by human-made barriers. As Tanya had touched upon, obviously the discussion around I-794 and the variety of alternatives that are currently being discussed, being addressed, recommendations in this plan, but also additional locations, as was shown, MacArthur Square, a key opportunity to connect downtown to the neighborhoods to the west. Recommendations for Hillside and the Brewery District, and how do we overcome some of the barriers that McKinley Avenue, for example, create? How do we better connect the west side and I-794? And then better connections to the lakefront. So again, overcoming and better connecting downtown and the nodes within downtown, but also to the adjacent neighborhoods in and around downtown. Another big idea focuses on the redesign of streets as public spaces. Again, as mentioned, public input throughout the planning process. I think somewhere around 50% of our comments that have came in from our residents and just different stakeholders talked about transforming streets to make safer and more enjoyable places for people to walk around downtown and see downtown streets, again, designed redesigned as vibrant and social spaces. You'll again see recommendations for implementing a complete street treatment on King Drive that better connects downtown in the Haymarket district and up to Bronzeville in the Bronzeville Cultural and Entertainment District to encourage new development on underutilized sites in the Schlitz Park area and throughout Haymarket. Moving south along Clybourne, you also see recommendations for a complete street along King Drive, for a complete street treatment. We learned a lot over the last few years through the City of Milwaukee's pilot Active Streets for Businesses program. Anybody that's been in the King Drive Entertainment District over the last few years had noticed reclaiming parking spaces as some of the travel lanes for enhanced wider sidewalks and outdoor seating areas, really is a reaction to some limited capacity during the COVID-19 pandemic. But what we did learn is really the success of that program. So you'll see in the plan recommendations to make some of those improvements and turn some of that space over to really support the businesses in the district, while yet accommodating a safer environment for all different users. And then finally, as I turn it over to Beth, recommendations for the Jefferson Street corridor to create a pedestrian priority street to maximize pedestrian space between Wisconsin Avenue and up through Cathedral Square Park. This also builds off some of the recent improvements that we've been able to work closely with the City of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County on through the perimeter improvements around Cathedral Square Park. And in the image, you'll see a narrowed shared street that accommodates more sidewalk space to support the businesses in the area, as well as a really slowed down street that could accommodate pedestrian, bikes, as well as automobile throughout the zone. And I think with that, I'm going to pass it over to Beth to continue.
Thanks so much, Matt. So great to be here with all of you today, and thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. I have the privilege of talking to you a little bit about another big idea, which is investing in our parks and our gathering spaces. And just a little bit of background for all of you, for those of you who are very familiar and who spend time in our parks. We know what a great asset they are. However, in some areas, and of course we're being aspirational here, we know we've lagged behind, and we have the fortunate opportunity to work with our colleagues around the country who have really had some really creative and innovative approaches in dealing with better management and maintenance of their parks and green spaces. Of course, we recognize fiscal constraints in the way in which our frameworks are currently built for the investment in infrastructure in our parks and that ongoing maintenance. And we really want to build parks and green spaces and public spaces that are safe and that are welcoming for all. And so, you know, we're entering into this next phase of the plan for our city of really accomplishing those goals. And we really think it's really critical to creating a space in which our community can connect, that is walkable. As Tanya and Matt both alluded to, more than 50% of our comments in that engaging space were really directed around accessibility and accessibility for all, and of creating and redesigning our streets and those public gathering places, and creating spaces and environments and activations and programmings for everyone that were reflective of our backgrounds of arts and culture, that were welcoming to families, that were unobligated spaces where people could just be in the community and enjoy time with one another. And then again, of course, it's all related back to, particularly after we're coming out of COVID, about the importance of health and safety, and spaces for activation and for people to protest and people to gather and people to celebrate. The other thing that we heard is better wayfinding, and of course, wayfinding is really important for people who aren't familiar with our city, but ultimately, it's about creating these world-class parks and public spaces that are going to bring together our community, our residents, our workers, our visitors, to celebrate, reflect, and protest. So here are some really great examples. And as Tanya had earlier alluded to, we are so fortunate, and we do differentiate between lakefront parks in this plan and what we call our downtown parks. So of course, our downtown parks are Pierre Marquette Park, Cathedral Square Park. We are right here, we're taking an image of Pierre Marquette Park and what it could look like. We already have a lot of activation and engagement between the various downtown organizations in these parks. But what we really want to see more of, and what we heard from you, is that connectivity and more open space and again, those public restrooms. And here's, I think, a really great example with Pierre Marquette Park and being along the waterfront and our beautiful Riverwalk area. Here is Red Arrow Park. We've been particularly focused on activations at Red Arrow Park. And what we heard from many of you, we are aspiring for in this rendering here is more landscaping, more greening, a large gathering lawn, of course, areas for activations in the park, accommodations for possibly food trucks, flexible parking lanes, and this plays off of as well the designs that Tanya spoke to you about relative to the Water Street activations and really calming that traffic and that enhanced canopy system along the streets that we think is really important for softening those edges. Then we move into designs around Cathedral Square Park. And I do really want to take the time to point out what a great working relationship we have with Milwaukee County Park System on so many of the things that we do. And of course, in Cathedral Square Park, there's a lot of activation and a lot of engagement with Friends of Cathedral Square Park, with the Easttown Association, of course, Bastille Days, the public market, Jazz in the Park. And we know that the public wants to see more activations like that, family-friendly activations, similar to what we do for the Milwaukee Holiday Lights Festival. But then, of course, taking the great best practice that was just exhibited through the Frame the Square work, that parameter area where sidewalk enhancements occurred, where greening occurred, really softening those edges of the park and bringing those design elements into the interior of the park, creating that permanent stage. Of course, a grove of trees. You know, we heard from a lot of people that they'd like to see more water features and enhanced playgrounds. We have a really great investment in the playground in Cathedral Square Park, but we have to continue to be focused on that. And Tanya did address as well under this segment the need to be able to more collaboratively look at, if we're going to build this infrastructure within our parks, how will we manage it? And across the country, we've seen some really great practices with urban place management organizations in ways that we can be creative and innovative in partnerships to do a better job of not only raising those dollars for the infrastructure investment, but for ongoing sustainability and resiliency and programming of these public spaces. The next big idea is really focused on growing downtown and some targeted areas in which we can have a focus point on that design and on creating these high value areas in which we can really meet those goals and objectives. When we think about the quality of life initiatives that are important for people as we begin to focus on growing downtown, and that means our downtown workforce population, even though we know we've moved into a hybrid model, we've got about 67% of our workforce back. And we believe in the near future anyways, that will be around the percentage of the workforce that is back. So what can we continue to do to build and to add jobs, to continue to attract investment? Tanya talked a little bit about the housing investment, including affordable housing. Right now, we currently have about 70% of our housing in downtown Milwaukee is affordable housing. So we're looking at very specific areas, growth and investment in infrastructure that will continue to enhance and create a high quality of life where people will want to continue to work and to live and to play. And that includes many of these areas that we already discussed and that you saw some of the renderings on that are bulleted here in this slide. So we, of course, have been hard at it, and the team has been amazing, and the public input has been unprecedented, and I hope it really sets the pace for future planning in our city. There have been some good things that have come out of the pandemic, I guess. I always like to look for the silver linings. And so we know this plan, with the wealth of knowledge and information and aspirations that have been established, we've got to develop some real serious work plans and really look at what are those next steps in terms of implementation. What do those work plans look like? What will those policies be? What are those steps that we need to put into place to really advocate for those changes that we need to make? What are some of those best practices and models around the country that we want to emulate here in Milwaukee? And so we'll continue to work with our partners at the city, our elected officials, the departments, Department of Public Works, the Department of City Development, Milwaukee County leadership in parks and in transit, and really bear down and begin to develop those work plans. I am so happy that our leadership at Bid 21, in addition to really investing in the work of this plan, hiring the diversity and equity consultant, and helping to assist with this work throughout the entire process, we are now organizationally committed to moving into long-range strategic planning specifically for the bid, but using as a baseline this new and updated downtown area plan. And in addition to that, our organization is engaged in another national study, and it's called The Value of Downtowns, where we're looking at baseline of data over 100 points. So we're extremely grateful to all of you for your work and your investment and helping us to set some high aspirational goals as we move into this next phase for our organization of strategic planning, and really looking at all of the possibilities and what we can do to leverage the investment of our stakeholders, to leverage the investment in the care of our community, to make certain that we are implementing all of these goals and objectives and big ideas that we've seen in this plan. So what are the next steps around this downtown area plan? This public, and you're getting a little bit of a sneak peek here, the public draft of the plan will be released on April 26th. We will have our final community open house. There will be cake, and there shall be a celebration as a way of saying thank you to the community for taking the time and the care and the concern of really sharing what's important to you. And that will happen on May 11th at the 3rd Street Market Hall from 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. And the virtual open house will continue. Tanya touched on the engagemke.com ability for you to have some input, share your big ideas, those virtual post-it notes. They're really critically important to us. And then as we move into the adoption process, there will also be opportunities for 2 public hearings, one at the City Plan Commission and then one at Zoning, Neighborhoods, and Development. Again, both of those are public hearings, but we hope to hear from you before that this plan is finalized and we move into the presentation to the full City Plan Commission and the Common Council. And then, of course, after those public hearings, we move into Common Council adoption, and adoption, of course, and acceptance by our mayor. So it has been a ride, to say the least, and hope that you will continue to participate, not only as we move through this final plan development, but then, of course, when the real work begins around the implementation.
Thank you. I assume that's your concluding slides. This has been fantastic, really exciting opportunity for downtown Milwaukee, but also for the region. Not just increasing density and jobs, but the amount of public space investment. We'll come back to a question on how that's all paid for in the partnerships, right? So I have a quick clarification actually for you, Beth. You had stated a statistic that 70% of downtown housing is considered affordable. I'm curious.
17. I'm sorry, 17.
17. Okay,
17.
no wonder.
I
wrote a
better
big question mark.
I better improve my articulation. 17.
Okay, maybe I'm the only one who heard 70%, but I wrote it down right away.
Carolyn,
Like-
just so you know, that does not include the naturally occurring. That is the, more permanently affordable units. So, the numbers are higher, but that's where we are. Yeah.
Right. Well, and affordable is just a certain price point. Usually that's how it's defined, not necessarily subsidized, but
Right.
okay. Thank you for that clarification. There were several questions and comments just responding to the pandemic, right? So as you were identifying job growth, but also residential density, could you just explain how you thought about the hybrid and the new trend of, remote work? How did that come into your discussions and your projections?
Sure. I'll kick it off, but Matt, I'd certainly want you to dive in too. I mean, it was discussed at length, right? How could it not when we were starting this process and couldn't even be in the same room with one another, and most of us were home. So there's a lot to unpack there, but we even in our office broker focus group, for instance, learned that yes, there's huge opportunities for us to convert existing office in our downtown to residential. But yet I'm going to pass things to Matt because we have so many more businesses coming to downtown simultaneously. So I think that was a big focus for this plan, is resiliency, right? In all ways, but including that and those unknowns so that we are flexible to absorb whatever is on the horizon.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. And I'll just add a little bit more. I think, throughout obviously a comprehensive plan, we've seen obviously a lot of talk about public space and the importance of those types of investments to make downtown just attractive to not only living, but working as well. But as we were started looking at some of our, more ambitious goal statements and sort of in line with sort of the mayor's directive of, how do we get to 1 million Milwaukeeans? And that's not only driving residential density, but it's also job density. Based on our, my tally alone, it's something that was recently reported by the Business Journal. Since 2020 alone, we tally over 7,000 jobs that have either announced, moved in, or are going through the process of gaining their approvals to move into a location in downtown, most of them within the planning area, a few of those, very nearby. But when you think about the Milwaukee Tools taking up 360,000 square feet during the middle of the pandemic of a formerly Class C building and truly doubling down in downtown. Same thing with the recent announcement from Pfizer, which is another near 800 jobs and about 160,000 square feet, again, of vacant space. So as we talk with our peers from across the nation, they're taking notice of that type of momentum that's happening in downtown, and it's not happening in every other community. So those are just a few examples, but riding sort of that momentum and the attractiveness of downtown and talking closely with our friends in the private sector, I think that we have a product that is highly desirable. And there's just a lot of different things that we have going in our direction. And it's a perfect time to be looking at the update to the downtown plan to how do we what have we learned, and then moving back. And then also just, I think we see media over and over where we do have a lot of our business executives trying to basically mandating or in some way encouraging their workforce to come back in whatever sort of model that looks like. But we do know that getting folks back together is something that's going to be here to stay. Obviously, there's a flexibility and other components that are now certainly built in. But we do think, the office and the job market and our opportunity to have more and more companies call downtown home is certainly something we feel good about and confident about.
I would
Well, and
also
obviously-
add to that, Carolyn, sorry,
Go ahead.
but I think this is important too, is that prior to the pandemic, our market research, we we identified that 1 out of every 3 employees in downtown Milwaukee lived within 1 mile of downtown. And I think that that is really important. When we looked at our peer cities across the country and how many of their retailers and restaurants were closing during the pandemic because they lacked the foot traffic to support them, I think we were really fortunate that even when people were working from home, we still had that significant residential population in downtown Milwaukee that when retailers and restaurants were open, they were there to support them. And I also think it's indicative, particularly when you look at the popularity of residing in downtown Milwaukee because of its proximity to arts, culture, sports, green spaces, the variety of things to do. We continue to be a really, really sticky destination where people want to live. And so we know even if there's the hybrid model, maybe they're not in the office, but they might be 5 blocks away in their apartment. So we also have that going for us. And we really see the capacity for us to be able to build on that. So I think that's just another important point for us.
I think it's also key that it's balanced with all the public spaces that you're looking at in the plan as well, because there's a lot of research out there that the more vibrant your community is with programming, not just having the public spaces, but programming and activities attracts people, both jobs and to live there. There was an early question as you started talking about the density and the amount of investment about concern of displacement, right? And maybe not immediately downtown, but in the adjacent Walker's Point and Bronzeville neighborhoods. So can you address how that might have been included in your discussions?
So prior to this process, the city actually has created an anti-displacement plan. We have a policy in place in regards to our investment in affordable housing in these areas that are a couple of the areas that are susceptible to displacement. Also in partnership with MKE United and Riverworks and some other partners, the anti-displacement fund was established that helps residents in a specific area of Halyard Park, Bronzeville, and Harambe, Brewers Hill. It's kind of a little pocket there, as well as Walker's Point. With support with their property taxes. There is a program in place. It is a state issue, right? We're seeing communities across the state that are seeing that property tax relief, particularly with retaining older residents in their homes when their homeowners is utmost priority, and certainly we're addressing it locally with this fund. And, I believe they are still working on fundraising to, support that because the pilot was so successful. So there's that. We also within the city regularly update what we call anti-displacement indicators. So we do a fairly robust analysis looking at the city to, better understand the dynamics of what's happening so that we can be aware of that. And so as new census data comes out, we're able to update that and monitor that as it will inform policy and future funding opportunities certainly as well. So it's a great question and is something that, we will forevermore, continue to consider as we're doing this work. And, we also included partners in those adjacent neighborhoods in the process too, to just ensure that there's that continuity of thought and consideration. I can drop some of the links to the plan and the fund in the chat if I can dig them up quickly.
Okay. Well, and I think what's been clear throughout your process is that this effort is linked to a variety of plans, right? Other city plans, so displacement, your climate equity, you're about to embark on a zoning update. And so there's a lot of that, I think, connection. There was a question though about the flexibility needed for zoning. So as you're looking at conversion of the vacant parcels, increasing density, do you think there's a political support, and where are there some changes that will be required to implement this plan?
Well, and certainly that consideration has been given to that as we've been writing recommendations so that, our zoning code can, it's living and breathing, right, can continue to evolve. In general, our downtown zoning, we do have specific downtown zoning districts are very flexible for mixed use and density. But certainly, they're, could and would and should and will be updates to that zoning, those zoning code districts eventually as well.
Okay, yeah, I would say Milwaukee is known to be somewhat flexible in the downtown zoning, which helps, and you let the market give some of the direction, since you don't want to build something that you're not going to be able to get tenants, whether it's retail or from the residential side.
Right.
There was a specific question about Zeidler Square that it didn't necessarily show up. Doesn't mean it's not being discussed, especially with Milwaukee Tool and We Energies. Can you just comment where that might fit into the recommendations?
Yeah, it is in our parks chapter. It is highlighted as an opportunity. And Matt, you may have some other thoughts there, because I know it's been certainly discussed recently, but it didn't come out in the engagement as one of the priority parks, but it's certainly important, right? And Matt, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that exactly hit it right. So certainly addressed, and then also just even recently with the Pfizer TID deal, there's going to be some improvements coming to the park, and it's an important. We certainly acknowledge the importance of it from the downtown bids perspective. We program it heavily with Holiday Lights, our partners at We Energies and others that surround the park. It's their front door, so it's a very, very important park, and certainly will be addressed in the plan.
Okay, great. I know there's only so much time today to cover everything as well. Yeah, so it'll be digging deep into the document. I just have a question. There's so many, great ideas, and we've had this over the last decade where we have all these great plans that come forward and then they aren't implemented because there's not funding available. So have you learned either through your process here or from other cities some really innovative ways to partner or funding sources that can help get these projects implemented?
Yes. And Beth was going to jump in, so I'm going to pass the torch to her. But I'm here too if
yeah, how do we get these done? I guess maybe I'll just throw that question out. How do we get all this done, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot, and I think I'm gonna speak a little bit to those spaces that are not controlled by private property owners, right? Because those are typically the spaces that we can not control, but we can certainly guide as it relates to area planning, because we're working with governmental entities. But it also then creates some barriers for really creating these enhancements, particularly when you look at fiscal constraints. So some of the examples I take, under the interstate, under 794, and what we, deem as a no person's land, and this vastness of land that can really become blighted and not as well maintained as we would like. And through really great partnerships and initiatives, we have partnered along with the historic Third Ward in some really great enhancements. And, Matt has led the effort for Brighten the Passage along with Paul Schwartz in the Third Ward bid, and that is with murals and activations and lightings. The Third Ward's implementation of the pickleball courts and the programming under River Walk Commons. The work that Matt has been leading again with the dog park in these government-owned spaces, if you will, where we're not deriving any revenue from a property tax base or from a bid assessment, but yet there's a willingness by these organizations and the organization's stakeholders to invest in these spaces. We see a lot of other similarities in our park spaces. And again, we have great Milwaukee County parks. We have a fabulous team at Milwaukee County Parks. But again, the ongoing fiscal constraints that Milwaukee County is contending with on the ongoing maintenance and care for these parks. So in another example, the downtown bids, activations and programming in these parks, everything from, the Summer in the City campaign to Tunes at Noon to Heartbeats of the City to Bastille Days to Jazz in the Park to, the new roller rink that initiatives that we will be taking on, the Holiday Lights Festival and events. So, and a whole variety of other markets that happen in these parks. These are all either bids or downtown organizations that are going out and they're finding the sponsorship or the funding for the activations in these parks. And they're great events, and the general public wants to see more of that, but it all costs money. So we have been looking, and Carolyn, you hosted a panel led by Gabe Yeager, our public space initiatives director, looking at other creative ways in which communities across the country are funding activations in their public spaces through, and it's public art as well as programming and other initiatives. So we're going to be having discussions around what do those urban place management organizations look like? Is it something that is palatable for stakeholders to help fund the possible creation of one of those? Because it's all wonderful to build this infrastructure, but we have to properly maintain it. And, you know, just think about the maintenance and ongoing sustainability of public restrooms. So we have at length conversations around new and innovative approaches about this. And certainly it is our desire to find solutions as we're moving forward.
Basically, I think what you've already proven successful is the partnerships and the fundraising, which is what I'm hearing other cities are doing. So I have one sort of final question, and Jen, you can put the survey link in the chat for those who are still attending. Please fill out the survey on today's session, but also give us suggestions on topics that you'd like to hear about for future innovative cities. We will start planning this summer for next fall. But there's a question about the homelessness and how that was integrated into the plan recommendations, as well as some of the public space programming.
And I'm happy to answer that. You know, I just got back from a leadership summit with downtown CEOs from across the country, and I was so pleased that everybody was talking about Milwaukee and our successful approach in caring for our unsheltered population. And I really attribute it to our model. It's called Housing First. It's a Housing First model that was designed and developed by Dr. Samson Barris. So continuing care for our unsheltered population is critical to us, and you'll see threads of that throughout the area plan, but our approach will continue to be the same, and that is we fund a full-time homeless outreach coordinator. Her name is Beth Lappin. She does extensive work in building relationships and working with our unsheltered population. We also have a full-time homeless outreach public service ambassador that supports Beth's work, and then also flips when Beth is not available, that he is available. And again, enormous gratitude to our downtown commercial property owners who invest significant resources in these positions. And you'll continue to see that play out, not only in the area plan, the reference to the quality of life and spaces and places for all and care for community, but as we move forward with our downtown business improvement district number 21 next strategic plan. I feel certain of that because that has been something that our commercial stakeholders really believe is an important investment in caring for everybody in our community.
Thank you for that. I think Milwaukee obviously is known nationally for some of their impact and also placing the homeless. So this is important to include that as part of one of your recommendations and an element to think about. So this has been a fantastic preview to your May 11th event, and encourage people to go online. You've Tanya's provided some of the links. This is an exciting time. We all have to be patient, right? It's not going to happen tomorrow. That's what happens with some of these excitement plans. But this is really important to be bringing together all of the different elements that do connect our city together, especially connecting the jobs along with the new housing density. So thank you again. So Tanya, Matt, and Beth for spending some time with us, sharing the ideas. And I wish you all the luck as you go through the next steps to get this approved and implemented. Thanks to everyone. Hopefully you will come join us on April 20th to hear from Bill Quackenbush. Reminder to just reserve a seat. We will have you in person, and then we'll see you again on May 2nd for our final Innovative Cities lecture for the semester. So enjoy the awesome weather. Have a good week.